Dune is a stunning epic visual spectacle, and nothing more. It's technically superb and the direction is executed with stellar competence to achieve an audiovisual experience that is best enjoyed in cinemas. And of course, it makes it being released on HBO Max on the same day something of a shame, since this was meant to take your senses by surprise there, in the theater. Alas, the coming of a certain unspecified virus that has an agenda of its own trying to scare everyone away delayed those plans, and Warner's great strategy to release their films for this year in cinemas at the same time as their streaming site has proven to be a mistake. You see, as a long-time Dune fan, I think the film is lacking in something that the Frank Herbert original sci-fi story had lots and lots of, and that is spirit. Like I said, it is a competent film, and given Blade Runner 2049's wonderful settings, those incredible establishing shots, the beautiful cinematography, and incredible special effects, well, one sort of expects this to be the case. The problem with Dune isn't even that they decided to split the first book in two parts. After all, it's a 1,000 plus page novel, so it makes sense. But the problem is how they chopped the story. And I don't mean to say how and where they decided to end part 1, so much as to what they decided to leave out and what they did with this first part of the book. For those who are yet to discover this sci-fi classic, Dune is set in the distant future, where humans have colonized different planets in the galaxy and have created an empire which depends on the Landsrat, which is a group of different and powerful houses that basically keep everything running. The economical basis of this empire is a substance named melange, or also known as the spice simply put, which allows space travel, heightens perception through hallucination, is highly addictive, and extends one's lifespan. It also makes your eyes go totally blue when consumed in large quantities, and also there are some deformities that are produced when space traveling is induced through this spice as well, of course. The spice is only found on the desert planet of Arrakis, and it's hard to mine. But one house, House Harkonnen, is responsible for that until the Emperor decides to give this duty to House Atreides from Caladan, a planet that is something of an opposite of Arrakis because it has lots of forests, many resources, and of course it also has lots of water. So it's different to Arrakis in many ways. The Atreides clan that is led by Duke Leto Atreides arrives on Arrakis trying to build their own power on an alliance with the native inhabitants of the planet that are called the Fremen. These people have their own ways and are different from the rest of the Empire, but the Duke relies on them to overcome what seems to him an evident trap. The Atreides were sent there to be destroyed because they are so powerful and they are growing in that power that they might become a threat to the Empire. And basically speaking, what happens is that, they are gotten rid of, which means that Duke Leto is killed and his only survivors are Paul, his son, and his concubine Lady Jessica, who is part of something of a special religious group, let's say, called the Bene Gesserit. Paul will have to adapt to a new life on Arrakis or try and take revenge on the Emperor and the Harkonnens for their betrayal and the destruction of his family by making use of his new allies, the Fremen. That is the premise, basically, of at least this first book. The story is difficult to adapt, of course, because of how Herbert used narrative to describe what was going down. He also used a lot of introspection from the characters, which is also responsible for David Lynch deciding to use that and inner monologues in excess in the 1984 adaptation, and also caused some criticism from those who went to see it originally back in the day. So, it was evident that a film adaptation of the material was going to be a titanic endeavor, and at least for me, Denis Villeneuve, that is the director of this thing, has somehow failed in bringing Dune to the big screen in the narrative department with all the excitement and all the beautiful moments that I got from reading the book. The world building is inconsistent, with some of it thoroughly thought out and some of it not really that fleshed out for the audience to understand what is going on. Worlds like Caladan aren't even well developed to understand how the Atreides clan is considered one of the most powerful houses in all of the Empire, and why both the Emperor and the Harkonnens fear their power. I mean, at times it feels as if only the people who we see on screen exist in these places and they are isolated from everyone else, with Paul walking around Caladan all by his own, all in the coastline. There are no other cities and one feels like he is alone. There are no other settlements and no other life forms around. It makes it feel desolate and abandoned. Caladan isn't the only one, with Gale Prime and Arrakis going the same way. Sure, the battle in the climax of the film is heavily populated, but one can't stop getting the feeling that all of this is happening in a world separated from the physical one, like it's stuck inside limbo or a vacuum of some sort, and that everything is only happening around the Atreides family. And yeah, they are the protagonists, especially Paul, but there are more things going on and we don't really get to see that. This in turn brings a problem of not fleshing characters out either. We have important people doing some stuff, like shout-out Mapes, for example, Dr. Yue, or Thufir Hawat, who make but cameo appearances in this case, and we never really get to know their personalities, despite the fact that they are important to the story, and also their background somehow help inform what is going on with the story and the plot. Same happens with Baron Harkonnen, Ravan, and even Lady Jessica. Because of this, I feel that the actors who played some of these characters are somehow wasted. I do not think anyone would doubt Rebecca Ferguson's acting capabilities, but she doesn't seem to make the character her own in the same way that she did it with, for example, Rose the Hat in the Doctor Sleep adaptation of Stephen King's book. Stellan Skarsgård is a superb actor with great capabilities and a wide range, but as Baron Vladimir Harkonnen he seems rather dim and not up to the possibilities he can offer as an actor. Sure, the 1984 version had an over-the-top Baron Harkonnen, which contrasts a lot with this version of the Baron being more methodical, more subtle, even more quiet, but it feels underwhelming coming from an actor with such experience and ability as Skarsgård, so I feel that he is wasted, even though many have said that it is worth of being praised. Other actors are evidently there only for the star power, as is the case of Jason Momoa, who seems to play himself in every single role he's given. Or Zendaya, who truly seems incapable of displaying any other emotion or expression that isn't the squinting of the eyes to convey what she thinks is an emotion or a reaction. I guess nobody has told her that that is not how humans behave, right? These actors feel like cardboard and, at least in my experience, detract from the rest of the film. I mean, there's a scene where we see Momoa's character Duncan Idaho and his relationship to the protagonist Paul Atreides. The scene is meant to build up an emotional connection between the two. When Idaho sacrifices himself later on to save Paul, we don't really feel anything, or at least I didn't. The scene didn't move anything in my emotions, and the character and his relationships were established before that, but the whole project just feels sterile, and it doesn't really convey that necessity for emotions being involved with these characters or with the story. Of course, actors like Josh Brolin, Javier Bardem, and Oscar Isaac provide much better performances, and I truly enjoyed them. The two I want to set apart from the rest of the cast are Timothée Chalamet and Dave Bautista. The latter tries really hard to do something other than being an angry Drax. In this case, believe me, he fails miserably in every single opportunity that he has. The good thing is that he doesn't have as much screen time though. As for Paul Atreides, Chalamet, well, I just don't understand why he was cast in that role. Seriously, I don't understand why or how anyone thought that this guy who looks like a girl and is just way too scrawny could play a character that's meant to be trained in as much of mental and leadership skills as in physical combat. He doesn't convince me at all, and let me tell you that I had a hard time believing. Actually, I didn't believe anything from beginning to end about this character. Even the soundtrack, which many praise beyond belief, seems rather dull and uninspiring. Truth be told, there are many bits here and there, but the overall soundtrack feels quite forgettable and doesn't stick with me as, say, the Dark Knight soundtrack, and it's the same composer we are talking about. I guess many just fall to realize that Hans Zimmer's name is just so big and they instantly think it's going to be a wonderful hit and a success, but I felt that it was quite a forgettable one for me, which is a shame because I really think there is something there, but it was just not achieved. Of course, I couldn't leave out what is my biggest gripe with this project, and that is the race and gender swapping. Liet Kynes is changed for a female black character just because. Diversity knocks at the door and you must always answer. I know many a progressive numbskull will say it doesn't matter because it's a fictional character we are talking about, or that I am just way too backwards because I complain only because it's a woman of color playing a white male character. But believe me, that is not the case. I mean, why change the source material? That is my real gripe. As a Dune fan, I have said it before, I think the source material should be respected. I didn't like the inclusion of Lady Toriel in the Hobbit movie adaptations, for instance, because it broke the lore, and the same happens here. These changes are unnecessary and break with the source material in many ways. Kynes was very well described in the book, and changing that for the sake of diversity is just stupid pandering, at least in my opinion, and that also stops me from really enjoying the show. Why? Well, because I am against this sort of thing. I am tired of this happening all the time in our entertainment, so I won't take it here either. So, with all this, was there anything I liked about Dune? Sure, I liked the visual spectacle of it all. I think that it's a very nice, well put together film in terms of cinematography and all those techniques that Villeneuve can use to convey these images. I also enjoyed the performances from Oscar Isaac and Josh Brolin, Javier Bardem as well, despite the fact that he had very little to do as Stilgar. The settings look very well put together. There seems to be some care put there in some of the settings, or at least in the CGI in some of the cases. The effects, of course, are good. And I would say that I should mention, like a non-ordinary thing, the costume department, and that deserves an ovation. I mean, it is one of the film's strong aspects, in my opinion, and it's the best thing that they have there. They should win an Oscar because of costumes, because they are really, really cool, and they are exactly as I imagined them when I first read Dune. Now, it might not be a bad film, but as a Dune fan, it doesn't convince me. There may be many that will tell you that the film is difficult for those uninitiated in Dune, or on Frank Herbert for that matter, but more than that, it's going to be a difficult film for those who are unwilling to think. Overall, it looks like a decent film, but it didn't speak to me. I didn't see that ecological concern that the original novel had. I didn't see any of those bits here and there of what a prophecy can make people believe, and how false messiahs sometimes can drive people into something that they shouldn't be doing. I didn't see any of that. All the time I felt there was something lacking. I couldn't connect with the work, and I felt like there was a numbness surrounding the project that prevented me from making meaningful connections with both the characters and the story, and that of course makes the story boring, even though when I first read Dune, I just couldn't put the book down. Again, I go back to the beginning of my video. This thing lacked spirit, lacked a soul. Needless to say, I don't support or condone the race and gender swapping, so I am glad I didn't pay for this thing, as I was invited and I couldn't let the opportunity pass, of course. But everyone is free to do as they please. I just don't feel that comfortable supporting works that go against their respected lore. So, as much as I think Dune is a stunning visual experience that everyone should enjoy on a cinema screen, I don't feel compelled to praise it. Nor do I feel it's worth it because of the disrespect given to the book's author, and because it looks great, but it lacks that emotion and that feeling. As for those who say this is like the Lord of the Rings of this time, you're so wrong there. Jackson crafted a wonderful adaptation, and he filmed it all together to keep consistency. Here, Villeneuve is waiting for the thing to be successful to see if he ever gets to film a second and even a third part. Plus, Dune is a story that spans 6 books as a minimum, and after Herbert's death, his son took up the task of writing lots of things more about this world, so it's quite heavy, and it's not going to end anytime soon. It's a difficult task, and I don't envy Villeneuve at all, but I guess what many have said before is true. This is an impossible work of fiction to film. As a fan, I am in the minority who didn't like it, but Dune is so much more to me than what we had on the screen, and it really disappoints me that we didn't get to see more of that. Sure, they'll shove it down our throats in the Blu-ray, but it's just not the same. And I know that the film will be successful because it has a lot of quality in certain other departments, even though the narrative for me was disappointing. We can only expect that the success of Dune will bring about a second part, and maybe they will improve on some things, but once again, because of those things that are there and they won't change, I don't feel rather excited about a second part. Anyway, that's all in my opinion, so let me know yours down below in the comments and tell me if you're interested in this film, are excited to see it, or just don't care about it. Until next time everyone, peace out.